So in this lesson, we're going to talk about enumerations, or what we call enums. Enums are essentially a way of tying closely related values with each other. So it becomes what we call a type safe. What it means is, it means you have values such as south, east, north, and west, and we put all of them inside one value called, let's say, direction, and then we can get direction.south and direction.north. And the reason it is safe is simply because we have to use the dot operation, and because of that, it's constrained. We cannot accidentally write a wrong value in there. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started in Xcode and see how we're going to do this. I'm going to go to Xcode, start a new project. Let's call it enums Swift. And in my enum Swift, I'm going to go ahead and say get rid of all of that as usual. So if you remember earlier on in some of our previous lessons, we were talking about an application that essentially is a real estate listing application. And we said some of the listings are for sale, some of them are for rent. So here is a very good example of how to use enum in here. I'm going to say enum, let's call it property type, and it has two cases, case sale and case rent. So I have two types, one of them is for sale, one of them is for rent. Now let's see how we're going to use that. I'm going to go ahead and say class, and my class is property. Doesn't have a superclass, and in it I have a variable, let's say address, which is a string, and I have a variable type which is prop type. And of course, if I try to initialize this, I have to say init imp address, which is a string as always, and imp type, which is prop type. And of course, self.address becomes imp address, and self.type certainly becomes prop type, or imp type, sorry, imp type. So simple as that. So every time we're making a property now, right off the bat, based on a constrained enum, we can choose which one of these two conditions is that. So here I'm going to go ahead and say where this property is going to be a property, and that property is going to be an address, let's say 3rd Street, and then an input type that's going to be prop type dot rent, for instance. So I know this one is for rent. And now if I wanted to use this, I could go ahead and say, for instance, if this was a member of an array and we were running a search, you can do all of those things yourself. I could say if this property dot type is prop type dot sale, for instance, then let's say display this, or whatever that you think you want to be doing with it. So that's essentially the core concept of enumeration or enums. So before I finish this lesson, there is one more kind of enum that I want to show you, and that's enumeration with case iteratable state. So here is how we do those. I'm going to go ahead and say enum, and my enum are cities, and it is case iteratable. And then the cases are Vancouver and San Fran and New York. And then I'm going to go ahead and say for, let's call it city, in cities all cases, print city for me. And that's about that. I can iterate through the objects in my cities, through the cases in my enumeration. So enumeration, very useful for when values are related to each other and you want them to be type safe. So you know specifically which one you're choosing. You're choosing property type dot sale, and you can obviously use those for a variety of purposes. We will end up seeing this happening more and more as we go through real applications. So I should see you guys in the next lesson, I guess.